It's fair to say that most AI vendors are going to draft contracts that significantly limit their exposure in the event of a lawsuit. What are the issues that are most likely to be litigated in a commercial contract for artificial intelligence? That's what I want to talk about today. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney. For over 20 years, I've been drafting and negotiating technology-related contracts and litigating failed technology projects in courts across the country. What are some of the typical issues that are going to be litigated if an AI contract goes sideways? Well, I think first and foremost, data security issues are going to rear their ugly head, and I think you've got to be prepared to have an understanding of what the risks associated with data security are going to be with respect to that contract and what the litigation profile of something like that would be in the event that it does go to litigation. I think you've got to think about cybersecurity issues. You want to think about privacy issues. You've got to think about data poisoning, cyber attacks. All of those are going to be incredibly important, and I think present a large amount of risk both to the customer and really to the AI vendor. And if there's going to be a litigation issue, certainly data security issues are going to rise to the top. And I think from a mitigation standpoint, it's going to be really important for you as a customer that's utilizing artificial intelligence functionality to have an understanding and to put contractual obligations into your agreement that relate to data security, data protocols. You want to make sure that that AI vendor is doing what it needs to comply with generally accepted industry standards regarding protecting your data. I think it goes without saying that certainly AI vendors are going to limit their liability, but the limitation of liability profile on these things and the standard carve-outs that you would typically see in a technology agreement, a software agreement, for example, they're going to be nuanced with respect to artificial intelligence, and you're going to have to account for that. And I think it's going to serve you well to have counsel or in-house people that have a deep understanding of artificial intelligence and how to negotiate these contracts. One of the other things that I think is likely to get litigated if one of these contracts goes to court is really ownership issues. The artificial intelligence vendor is going to want to have some sort of ownership interest in the data that is being utilized to train that model. Potentially, they're going to want to have potentially an ownership interest in the outputs, and certainly any kind of intellectual property associated with making that AI product better. The training of that AI model, I think the AI vendor is going to have some sort of vested interest in having an ownership interest in that. I think likewise, as a customer, you're going to want to retain ownership of your data. If you're inputting any kind of intellectual property into that system, you're going to want to make sure that you retain ownership and that you're not forfeiting your rights into that information simply because you've incorporated it into artificial intelligence tool, and that's now being distributed out as output or a basis for output to other customers of the AI vendor, potentially even your competitors. I think infringement issues associated with the outputs are going to rise to the forefront. Those issues are going to be litigated, and some of them actually are moving through the courts now in the context of intellectual property. So certainly, infringement issues and ownership issues, ownership of data, are all going to be substantive issues that I think are going to be litigated in the context of artificial intelligence contracts, at least as they're used in the commercial context. Again, I think one of the best ways to think about this is from an input and output perspective. You want to have an understanding of the risks associated with what is being put into the AI model, both by the vendor and by yourself. You also want to have an understanding of what is coming out of it and who owns that, what risks are presented by the outputs from a practical perspective, and certainly if this thing goes sideways and there's a litigation issue, you want to have an understanding and really nail down those issues associated with who owns what, who has the right to do what, what kind of licenses are being granted in order to utilize outputs, in order to utilize the information that has been input into the artificial intelligence tool or functionality. So all of these things, I think, in general, are kind of the bigger concepts and bigger issues that are going to lead themselves to litigating or litigation in the context of artificial intelligence. And I think, if you have an understanding of these things, then I think you're going to be able to mitigate them. And I think it's really on you to engage experts and attorneys that have an understanding of how these contractual provisions are all going to work together, so that you can give yourself a dog in the fight in the event that you had to litigate one of these contracts. If you have any questions about any of the issues that we've talked about in this video, or if you're about to engage an AI vendor, or you're having issues with your AI vendor that might lead to litigation, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you about it and get you pointed in the right direction.